Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Sabres Chat with myself, Luka. NHL playoff season is here. Sabres aren't in it, but regardless, as a hockey fan, this is a fantastic time of year. Currently, right now, recording on Tuesday evening, the Rangers took care of business with the Capitals. Capitals looked a little bit better tonight. They weren't able to get it done. My household is happy, being that my wife is a Rangers fan, but overall, Rangers take care of that one. The battle for Florida is currently in overtime as I am talking right now. We will see how that goes. The Jets up 1-0 after one. Preds up 1-0 halfway through the first. Things are electric. Playoff hockey's fantastic. All of that. It's the best time of year as a sports fan, if you even branch out to other leagues. But as a hockey fan, it truly doesn't get better than where we are right now. And we want the Sabres to be involved in this. It feels like a lifetime ago that we were able to experience this. And leave it to the Sabres, though, to do something in this time where season ends. Don Granato is relieved of his duties. He is fired the next day. Locker clean out. We hear a lot from the players. We get the press conference from Kevin Adams talking about looking for pedigree and accountability from behind the bench with a lot of experience. And of course, the rumor mill was flying on prospects of who could be that guy behind the bench. Few names were just recycled over and over. Craig Berube. There was the Rod Brendamore conversation because I believe his contract is coming up with Carolina. I personally, when it comes to that boat, was not feeling that Rod Brendamore was serious. I feel like Carolina would be silly to let him walk out. But another name, of course, and one that I've even brought up on previous ones because it's been out there. It's not like it's been a crazy secret, but Lindy Ruff has been brought up as a return. Obviously, during this past season, he was relieved and fired by the New Jersey Devils halfway through. I think he was a 30-27 and change record at the moment in time. They were underperforming compared to what they had done the previous year. And it was just something where between him being available and what we heard from Kevin Adams, it felt like the writing was on the wall. We sit here now, as I said, recording Tuesday, April 23rd. Lindy Ruff is officially back behind the bench at KeyBank Center now to be the head coach of these Buffalo Sabres. And as I say that, Florida wins in overtime. It's a move first and foremost. How do I say this? Lindy Ruff is back as a coach for the Buffalo Sabres. And I believe, is it a home run hire? No, but it's a very good hire in my mind. And I think it's a hire that was needed to get this team to take a step in the proper direction. And tonight, I will kind of give my thoughts on why that might be the case and why I'm not necessarily over the moon about it. But at the same time, the only reason I'm not over the moon on it is I wanted something a little bit different and fresh. And when you have a likes of a Craig Berube, who has done wonders for the St. Louis team that he did before he was let go, that seemed very enticing to me. But it's not like I'm disappointed with the hire of Lindy Ruff. And the first thing that I truly look at when it comes to the hire of Lindy Ruff and go, this is why it makes sense, is it is exactly what Kevin Adams said that this team needed. And I agree with that statement. It needed something with a little bit more experience and pedigree. It needed something that the head coach needed to have, hold the roster much more accountable from behind the bench. Shout out to After the Whistle, of course, with Peters and Rivet. Peters brought up a great point in my eyes that it's a highlighted example of what I truly believe will be the difference between what we've seen with the Don Granato era and then what we will be seeing with the Lindy Ruff era returning to Buffalo. In the Detroit game, that was vital late in the season, where Jack Quinn just absolutely laid an egg early on and essentially handed 2 goals for free to the Detroit Red Wings in a crucial game. That, to even get to the second error, would not happen under a Lindy Ruff. I feel like the accountability to even the young players, which Buffalo obviously has plenty, but anyone on that bench, you are held accountable as a professional. And if you are screwing up, if you are not playing to a standard that is expected of you, you will be held accountable. You will be benched, most likely, for either a temporary period of time or even a whole game. We have seen that in the past with Lindy Ruff. He has not been afraid to do that whatsoever. He will short shift players to get around it, and he will make it happen because it's just either not your night or he is not happy with what's going on with your game. And in that same respect, another thing we're going to see that we clearly did not see this past season is an emphasis on special teams. And Lindy Ruff is a phenomenal coach when it comes to special teams. He takes pride in the penalty kill first and foremost, but then he also has this nature about him where you will see an improvement in the power play because he values special teams greatly and understands that that can make or break results in this league. So, from accountability to detail oriented ways of the special teams, that will also bleed into what the system will be and how, the style of play that will be expected if you are wearing these colors, if you're wearing the blue and gold or black, red, and white, depending on the night of the jersey. But overall, if you are wearing Sabres colors that night, you are expected to play in a certain way on the blue line, in the forwards, and everything in between. You will need to do what he is coaching and what he preaches day in, day out for you. And if you are not doing that, once again, to keep tying it back, and this is going to be a theme of this episode, which should be short and sweet, but overall, you will be held accountable. He will make sure you know what is going on. And we've heard all the stories of the past throughout the years. There's a reason that Lindy has a reputation. Now, in his presser, he has even, he even indicated, his time in New Jersey and stuff, he has evolved as a coach throughout the years since he was last behind the bench for the Sabres. And he understands that the game has changed and you need to change how you coach these players. So it might not be a carbon copy of what we had heard about and what we had even seen at times back in the glory days of Lindy Ruff coaching the Sabres. But overall, the message and the style and the expectations will still be there. Lindy is someone that obviously holds a very high standard across the board, and you must meet it. To go away from play on the ice now a little bit, another thing that I am honestly excited for Lindy Ruff, and I believe, others with experience would have also brought this. And that's what I value in the hire. And I think it's a larger bubble where it's an acceptance or liking of the hire. Berube would have been the same. This would have checked the same box, so on and so forth. Excuse me. Lindy coming in should be able to help Kevin Adams and help the organization fully understand what this roster needs in order to achieve winning hockey and how to be successful in the league. And what I mean by that is it's clear as day that this roster needs change. Lindy is not going to be able to take exactly what we've seen last year and instantly get it to a playoff caliber roster and team and expectation. I think it's possible, but realistically, you can't just expect it to happen with what you have. You have too much of the same thing. There's still a lot of youth and they're still they have a lot to learn. Next year, it would be surprising if they just run it back as is and see a vast improvement. It would be a surprise. Even with how much I respect Lindy Ruff and how much I respect him and what he will be able to do, hopefully for the foreseeable future. But the roster needs some other things. It needs a little bit of change. And I fully expect Lindy to be sitting down with Kevin Adams, and the hire being as quick as it is great because they can kind of hit the ground running well in advance of free agency, of course, and the draft and everything else. So you have the ability to fully understand where your assets are, what the market's going to look like, and then what you can utilize in the draft once that time comes. And I'm not talking about drafting players either. I'm talking about utilizing those picks potentially even to move and package with maybe other players to then acquire someone else that would be a quote unquote Lindy Ruff guy, a Lindy guy, someone that will play the way that he expects the rest of the team to play. And I fully expect someone to be coming in that checks that box. I expect someone of a major impact. I don't have an exact name and idea with that, but I imagine it's going to be someone more in mind for the bottom six forwards and an emphasis on penalty killing and everything like that. Like, I think there will be something there, like we've seen in years past with Lindy teams, that will be moved in, and it will take either free agency and or trade in order to make that happen. And that's good. That's good for this team. That's good for the organization. There is something that needs to change. The best thing for Lindy, though, coming into this situation uh, and removed from the New Jersey situation is, I think there's a lot of flack out there that's unwarranted or just kind of ill-advised, where, Lindy's kind of lost it or it doesn't make sense. And, what are the Sabres doing? Because what we saw with Lindy in New Jersey was, obviously they had one good year, but even leading into early on in that year, there was chance in New Jersey of fire Lindy. They obviously go on a tear. Things work out in that season. They have some success. It's hope the expectation is that they can build on that. It doesn't come, and then Lindy is fired. Lindy has always been a coach, of course, where you can maybe give him the crutch of he needs an elite goaltender or he needs great goaltending. You cannot have these two things. The failure of New Jersey, and that is an example. And then he leans on great goaltending. Those two things are not linked because the one big knock right now on New Jersey is they do not have goaltending. They didn't even have goaltending when they did have success last season. Not this past season, but the season prior. When they obviously made the playoffs, they even beat the Rangers in the playoffs, made it to the second round. Um, it wasn't like goaltending was what got them there. It was style of play, skaters, and the high fly kind of attitude, while also an emphasis on understanding your role on a team, playing to the system, and truly playing as one while out there all down the lines. And they then took that roster, lost key guys. And in my eyes, the number one, I mean, it's someone that I even said in free agency, I would love the Sabres to target this guy, Miles Wood. Losing him to Colorado was a big blow. I think he was vital in what Lindy tries to achieve and what that style is needed, especially with a roster what you have built in New Jersey. The Sabres are going to have to figure out something in that same variety where they bring in these guys. And then also in New Jersey, for what it's worth, they lost two of their top four defensemen in the offseason. There are other injuries involved during the season this past year, and it just fell apart. You can't hold that on Lindy. Like, that's the Devils felt that it needed to be, and they needed change and so on and so forth. But then the coach that came in did even worse than him. So it was readily apparent that, they just wanted to move on from Lindy. And since it wasn't working out at that time, it is what it is. Now, what I expect Lindy to do, like I've been saying, of building this roster, creating a culture through both player transactions and however you need to roster build in the way that he has envisioned, while also obviously taking these blue chip items that the Sabres have in Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, of course, your Dylan Cousins, all of these guys, and truly, you know, making them understand and coaching them and teaching them how to play winning hockey, something that definitely has not happened in the Granato era. Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Sabres actively try to figure out a way where, for instance, they try to move on from Skinner by any stretch of the imagination. Is it possible with his contract? Seems like it's not, but overall, if there's something they can do about it potentially, I would imagine Jeff Skinner does not fit the mold of what a Lindy Ruff player needs to be. And therefore, I could see something happening there. It would be very interesting to see what they could do in order to achieve something like that to get him off the roster. But regardless, you have the likes of like that. You have we'll call them assets like Peyton Krebs, like Jack Quinn. Even there's a little bit of a question mark in my eyes, at least. You know, you have guys who also just are similar to a lot of other guys on the roster, and I would love, I would love to see these guys moved however you can and do that. I will say I don't hate the idea that's also been spat out there where you forecasting, looking down the road, you have Rasmus Dahlin in paying him his contract. You have Owen Power currently on his contract. You have Matthias Samuelsson on his contract, not in the same realm as, Power and Dahlin, but still he's under contract. And that's an interesting situation in its own right. And then Bo Byram, you will eventually need to pay him, your $6-ish million after next season, if not more, depending on what happens and how you navigate. You can't just have that much money tied into those guys. Like that seems like an excessive amount. So you're going to probably have to move on from one. Conventional wisdom would be Matthias Samuelsson. It's not working out. Figure out another thing, find a way to navigate that one to get that off. You turn that into Bo Byram's contract and off you go. But part of me also does entertain the idea with, I think it'll be interesting to see how Lindy feels about Owen Power, but Owen Power looked like a lost deer last year. And, it was a massively disappointing season for him. If it's felt that his game may not translate the way that was hoped when you picked him and everything of that nature, seeing what you could do with him and what you could bring in instead, whether it's on the blue line as a replacement and or figuring out maybe if that's the way you can acquire something for your top six that gives something else that it desperately needs. It's just an intriguing idea that I think I respect, and I think Kevin Adams respects Lindy Ruff's, uh, you know, experience and knowledge that if he has an assessment and a judgment and he knows this team. Like it's not like he was taking off coaching for years and he would have only been watching as a fan for the past few years and now they signed him off the streets. He was just a coach in this league. He had to coach against this exact team for the past few seasons. He knows this roster on tape. He needs to meet them as the players and all of that stuff, but as individuals, but he knows the players. It's not like he doesn't know this team. And I fully trust how he will evaluate that, how he will evaluate the roster in its current format and what needs to happen and what needs to change, because change does need to happen in order to get winning hockey on the ice for the Buffalo Sabres, because what is currently there is just not good enough. And that is why Lindy Ruff is here, both to teach things and have them playing a certain way on the ice, but also getting the roster set up to be more successful, to play that way on the ice this upcoming season and for the next season. The interesting tidbit I find about this too is it is only a 2-year contract that he signed. So I'm not thinking that the idea is he's only kind of a temporary solution for now until we get to the next guy. And he truly is just almost like a consultant at coach. Um, I think the thought is if you can find success, if you can actually build something with this, obviously they will extend from there. Um, I do think that there's something to it as well, that because of how the NHL works, Lindy Ruff is being paid by the Devils for whatever his extension amount was through this next season and the season after. And the Sabres are just supplementing whatever section of pay that, say his extension was 2.5 million for the next 2 years, next 2 seasons. And the Sabres are like, hey, we'll give you a 2-year contract for 750K season. The Sabres pay 750K a season, and then the Devils still have to pay that remainder to meet the 2.5. So, I don't know what the exact figures are. I didn't look it up, but overall, I think that played a role in why it's just a 2-year. And, from there, we will see how successful it appears to be. But overall, I genuinely believe, even if it only lasts 2 years and it doesn't bring great returns when it comes to production, I think that his experience and his ability to evaluate a roster, his ability to teach a team how to play winning hockey should be able to give them over the next hump, which hopefully is playoffs, of course. But even if it doesn't extend past 2 years, he will leave this team in a better place for whatever is to come after that. And if it is if it does find its legs and grows in success next season and the year after, obviously they can continue to extend him and move on from there. I believe that is possible. I find it interesting, just to kind of wrap up this conversation. I find it interesting that in his press conference, he had brought up that staples of the previous um, marquee team, Ryan Miller, Pominville, Vanek, he had referred to how they had reached out to him. And I believe that he had said even specifically that Pominville had let him know that, he is the guy that can get them there. Um, it's, I agree with that. I will say I do also get how other alums that were players under Lindy might find it to be a head scratcher, only because, again, going back to something said earlier, uh, it's hard to get the image of what you had experienced yourself out of your head. And who Lindy was previously with the Sabres, I imagine, is different than who he is now. He has grown, he's evolved. He is not probably what it was to be a coach then, same as what it is now. Like, I find that very hard to believe, just because the player themselves have changed as human beings, and how you motivate them, and what's the best practice to coach them, because what he had found successful 15, 20 years ago, in no shape or fashion would work in today's game. I don't think you'd be able to motivate players now in that same manner. There might be some out there that are a little bit old school and rough around the edges, but I don't believe that that's the case. And I don't think he's that type of guy anymore, because you wouldn't still be around unless you've evolved, and that is actually true. So it's an exciting time for the Sabres in my mind, because the nostalgia is there, of course. I do believe Kevin Adams when I say that nostalgia didn't play a factor. It's just kind of like a cherry on top or an extra. Because everything he said that they were looking for behind the bench to then lead this team going into next season, Lindy Ruff, of course, fulfills those check marks. Like, he checks all the boxes. So, as I said, I agree with this hire. It's not my number one choice, but overall, I am happy with it. And I will say, obviously, like any other lifelong Sabres fan, the nostalgia of this hire is going to be the honeymoon phase is going to be great. I am praying that early on they are finding success and things are working, because I want that to not quickly be spoiled. And we really question things and wonder if Lindy's past his prime and all of the conversations that you can imagine will happen. I want early success for this team, and I want notable changes so that it truly does look like both Lindy and Kevin Adams, you know, it affirms that this is not a nostalgia based hire. It wasn't like it was a flip of the coin between Berube and Ruff, and it was like, well, we'll tip the scale to Ruff because he still lives in Buffalo, and he still cares, and so on and so forth. It's one of those things where I would love to see actions that support the words that clearly are there, that I do like and enjoy, that say, this is what's best for the team. We believe this is what's going to be best moving forward. The reasons that I even said I believe are reasons that they believe are the reason, is what it is. Man, that was a lot of reasons. Is what it is that makes the Lindy Ruff hire make sense. And I am very, very excited to see how this breaks down in the coming months, going into free agency, going throughout the offseason. And when we are sitting here during training camp, we have Lindy Ruff behind the bench once again. And we're hearing from Tuck and Tage Thompson and Darlene and all the guys on how tough practices are. It's noticeable on the change, and they believe that what they're going to do is going to find them in much more successful situations moving forward, rather than scraping by with pond hockey or whatever you want to call it, in order to maybe make the playoffs, but never really actually be there, and always come up short in big games. So I am very, very excited about the hire, and I can't wait now to see what the future holds with Lindy returning to Buffalo, returning to the Sabres bench. And it's a fun time to be a Sabres fan, even in the doom and gloom of realization that we are in yet another playoff season again that they are not involved in, and everyone else gets to have the fun, like, you know, the Rangers and the Capitals and all these other teams. Capitals, with their negative 30 plus goal differential, are in the postseason, but here we are with yet another year without playoffs. It's sad, but I believe that this hire was a good one and puts them in a positive direction moving forward. So appreciate you listening. As always, be sure to like, comment. How do you feel about the Lindy Ruff hire? Do you agree with it? Is there anything that kind of catches your eye on it, both in a positive and negative light? I love interacting with anyone that likes to comment and whatnot. So feel free to leave your comments, or just hate of it or love of it, whatever it is. Are you just wrapped up in the nostalgia so much so that you keep watching, old mid 2000s clips, or go back even further to the late 90s? Um, it's I love it. Interact. Let me know. How are you feeling? You can do it on Twitter as well, at Sabres Chat Pod. Let me know how you're feeling on everything like that. If you're not already following, please give a follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course. We love providing you both this Sabres content, but also all of the Bills content we have. The next time you will see me on camera, I will be rejoined with my Bills Chat co-host, Josh, as well as our normal third man in the chair, Stokes, for Thursday night, our live show, our draft night live show spectacular. We did it last year. We did it with the brand of which we were with at the time, Built in Buffalo. We are now on our own again, of course. And we loved it so much when we did it then. We're doing it once again. We may even have the feed on our live show. I'm trying to navigate that one to get around certain things so that you can watch along with what we are watching along with. Very excited. Very, very excited. You can catch that again Thursday night. We will be going live at 7:45 p.m. The draft starts at 8. So a little bit before, We'll introduce, we'll get all riped and ready. I'll have a beer with me, or two or three, whatever it might take, and everything like that. We're very, very excited for that. And I'll be back in a couple of weeks with another Sabres Chat episode. Hopefully things happen. Hopefully we get a little bit of, updates on the NHL playoffs, of course, everything else like that. And it's a fun time to leave the previous Sabre season in the rearview mirror. We have now the next era of a returning era, hopefully, to success with the Sabres. I am Luka, as always. This is Sabres Chat. You all have a great rest of your day, and join me next time in a couple weeks for a new episode. And please feel free to stop by our live show during the NFL draft to get all your NFL reaction as Josh, myself, and Stokes follow along the first round of that draft live from our YouTube channel. Have a great one. Take care. And please keep a smile on your face because times are good, summer's around the corner, and everything is fantastic.